What if the NFL's most underrated quarterback isn't failing, he's being buried alive by his own team? Right now, behind the scenes of America's most powerful sports league, something deeply wrong is unfolding and barely anyone is talking about it. We're talking about Shadur Sanders, a name you probably recognize not just because of who his father is, but because of what he did at Colorado, where he turned heads and silenced critics week after week. Scouts called him NFL ready, a projected first-round pick with elite talent, intelligence, and leadership. And yet, here we are. It's week after week of watching him ride the bench. Not injured, not in trouble, just ignored. Even when the Browns are getting crushed on the road, no snaps. Even when they're up by 30 inches garbage time, still no snaps. And then came the tweet. What looked like an innocent, faith-filled message about letting go and trusting a higher plan was something else entirely. For those truly watching, it was something darker, a coded message, a white flag, a player realizing this isn't about football anymore. And when you realize why he isn't being played, and what fear the Browns are secretly hiding, you might lose every ounce of faith you had in how the NFL actually works. It happened quietly, but it didn't go unnoticed. Shadur Sanders dropped just a few lines on social media. No emojis, no hashtags, no flashy graphics. Just a simple, composed message. This season, I've learned to trust in God, to find peace through faith, and to let go of what I can't control. At first glance, it sounded like your standard athlete reflection, the type of post you see every Sunday morning, sandwiched between workout clips and Bible verses. But this wasn't that. Not even close. Because people following this story, the beat reporters, the analysts, the front office insiders, they read that post very differently. To them, it didn't sound like someone finding peace. It sounded like someone surrendering. And that changed everything. Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Fans who were only half paying attention suddenly leaned in. Retweets started flooding timelines. Podcast hosts pulled it up mid-episode, voices getting quieter the longer they read. Because when you understand the timing of that post and everything Sanders has been through this season, you realize this was a resignation letter disguised as spiritual clarity. We're talking about a young quarterback with NFL-level mechanics, film that speaks for itself, and bloodlines running through Canton, and now he's essentially admitting that he's done fighting. Not because he's quit on himself, but because he finally understands what so many young athletes eventually face in the league. Sometimes it doesn't matter how good you are. Sometimes the narrative is bigger than the game. And when that kind of realization hits, it cuts deeper than any sack or loss ever could. But why would he feel this way? What could push a player this talented to send a message like that? What the Browns are doing, or more accurately, refusing to do, is something no one can fully explain. But the clues are all there. And once you see the full picture, it gets even worse. Because whether the Browns will admit it or not, Shadur Sanders isn't being overlooked. He's being erased. And the proof? Well, it's hiding in plain sight. Here's the part that makes absolutely no sense. Unless you're willing to believe this goes way deeper than football. Just weeks ago, the Cleveland Browns were getting embarrassed on the field, a complete blowout, the kind of game coaches usually scrap by the third quarter. Offense wasn't clicking. The outcome was already sealed. No comeback coming. It was the perfect time, the obvious time to rotate in the backups and salvage something from a brutal loss. Except they didn't. Shadur Sanders, their fifth-round pick, highly touted prospect, sitting right there on the sideline, never touched the field. Not one snap, not a single play. The Browns left their starter, Dillon Gabriel, out there to get punished until the final whistle, even as the scoreboard torched their dignity. But maybe, you think, they just don't play backups in losses? Cool, let's fast forward 7 days. Now the Browns are winning big up, 31 to 6 inches the fourth. The game is over. The Miami Dolphins have already done what every smart team does, rotated their starters out, giving their young guys some run in garbage time. And what did the Browns do? Same thing. They kept Sanders on the bench like he was invisible. Dillon Gabriel, a quarterback putting up sub-100 yard stat lines, stayed in the entire game. He finished that blowout with 90 passing yards. That's not a typo, 90. In a full NFL game, that's a borderline college quarter stat. Yet the Browns rode that out like he was Tom Brady in the fourth quarter of a Super Bowl. It made zero football sense. None. Because this isn't about protecting starters anymore. This isn't about game rhythm or injury risk or momentum. This is about one thing. They don't want Shadur Sanders to play under any circumstances. Not when they're losing. Not when they're dominating. Not even when the outcome is meaningless. It's what coaches call a deliberate freeze-out. But to a rising star like Sanders, who's done everything by the book, it feels a lot more like sabotage. And if you think that sounds like a stretch, just wait until you hear what NFL analysts are saying behind the scenes. Because they're seeing through the smoke. And what they're saying next might be the most unfiltered truth anyone's willing to speak. At this point, the question practically screams through the screen. Why? Why would a team refuse to give a young, talented quarterback any reps, not even in throwaway minutes? And then, an answer surfaced. Not from a coach or official press conference, but from an analyst, someone who knows how the game really works behind closed doors. If Shedeur plays 2 minutes and completes 2 passes, it's over. Wait, what? Let that sink in. Not over as in the team falls apart, over as in coaches lose the narrative, over as in the front office has to start answering uncomfortable questions, over as in now the media wants to know why your 5th-round backup looks better than your starter. Because here's the raw truth, the Browns will never admit publicly. They're afraid of what happens when Shadur Sanders looks good. And he will look good. He's accurate, poised, calm under pressure. He reads defenses like film, and they know it. So, the Browns, in what might be the most ridiculous strategy in recent memory, are trying to avoid a quarterback controversy by never giving the more talented quarterback a chance to create one. They don't want headlines. They don't want press conferences asking why Dylan Gabriel, the guy they chose, is underperforming while Sanders rots on the bench. They don't want a single viral clip, not even a sideline highlight that could create momentum. Because if Shadur goes in and so much as makes one drive look clean, the world starts demanding change. And the Browns would rather look foolish from stagnation than admit they made the wrong choice. So, week after week, no matter what's happening on the scoreboard, Shadur is iced out, not because of merit, not because of performance, but because the Browns fear the truth getting out. They backed the wrong QB, and they know it. And that is not a football decision. That's politics. That's ego. That's pride over progress. And unfortunately, it wouldn't be the first time a young quarterback's career got caught in the crossfire. But the difference this time? Everyone's watching, and it's starting to boil over. Because the lying is becoming harder to justify. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Heading into the draft, every scout, analyst, and mock draft on TV pundit had the same take. Shadur Sanders was a top-tier talent. First round, easy. Maybe even top 10. The arm strength? NFL level. The decision-making? Polished. The poise under pressure? Off the charts. Oh, and media-ready since high school, by the way. This was a quarterback molded for the league from day one. And yet, Shedeur didn't go in the first, or the second, or the third. It wasn't until the 5th round that his phone finally rang, and that call came from Cleveland. A lot of people said it was the steal of the draft. But now, it's starting to feel more like a setup. Because here's the wild part, nothing about his game had changed. This wasn't a player who struggled in combine interviews. He wasn't arrested. No locker room drama, no team issues, no off-field screw-ups, nothing. So why did he fall so far? Turns out, the character concerns scouts whispered about weren't really about him. They were about his father. That's right, Deion Sanders, the Hall of Famer, media icon, and head coach of Colorado, was somehow seen as a threat to his son's future. Teams were reportedly worried about the attention. They didn't want the cameras. They didn't want the noise. They didn't want primetime potentially being too present in their building. So let's get this straight. A supportive father who happens to be an NFL legend who's trained his son, guided him, mentored him, and built him into a pro-ready QB, is now the reason teams said no? Imagine punishing a player for having the best possible support system a young athlete could ask for. It's not just backward. It's broken. And it speaks to something far deeper. It's not about talent. It's not about discipline. It's about narrative control. And Shadur Sanders came into the league with the wrong last name for that. So the NFL let him slide out of fear. And the Browns? They scooped him up and then shoved him behind a wall the size of their insecurities. That 5th round card he was drafted on? that wasn't a steal. It was a muzzle. And now, Shedeur is living inside the consequences of a league too scared to play him and too proud to admit why. For a while, it was just the fans. Then it was the media. Now, even the Browns' own players are starting to speak up without saying a word. It started subtly. A few passing comments. Some sideline body language. A look here. A shake of the head there. But then, Myles Garrett, the Browns' defensive titan, a top 3 defensive player in the league every single year, said something that hit differently. "I'm tired of playing the same kind of football every week. Defense wins the game, offense barely holds on." He didn't mention Dylan Gabriel. He didn't bring up quarterback rotations. But he didn't have to. Every player in that locker room and every reporter within earshot understood exactly who he meant. Because Garrett's not just a star. He's the soul of that team, and when he's airing out frustration with the way the Browns are scraping by while the offense sputters, that's not just a soundbite, that's a warning shot. And how could he not be frustrated? Week after week, it's his defense that's winning the game. Pick sixes, forced fumbles, sacks in crucial moments. The Browns are clinging to wins not because of their quarterback, but in spite of him. Meanwhile, Shadur Sanders, the guy torching Big 12 defenses last season, is standing there in a hoodie, watching, waiting, wasting away. And don't think players haven't seen it. NFL locker rooms are filled with competitors who know when someone can ball. They see it in practice. They hear it during film. They watch him warm up the throws, the confidence, the leadership. It's all there. Talent doesn't hide for long. And there's only so long a team can pretend not to see what's right in front of them before the trust begins to fracture, not just with fans, but within. Because this isn't just about one benched quarterback anymore. It's about a locker room wondering why the guy giving them the best chance to win is stuck in timeout for reasons no one can explain. And the Browns' plan to keep this a quiet little non-story? That plan's leaking, fast. If Shadur Sanders had a different last name, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Let's just say it. Because what we're seeing right now is one of the clearest examples of the NFL's quiet, calculated double standards. When a first-round pick walks into a locker room with confidence, says he believes he should be starting, the press loves it. They call it the swagger of a franchise QB. They break down the intangibles, praise his self-belief, highlight his composure under pressure. They spin it into a fairy tale, he's built for this. But when Shadur Sanders says the exact same thing, he gets roasted, arrogant, entitled, doesn't know his place, too much ego for a backup. Suddenly, that same confidence becomes a liability. That same belief in himself, misread as delusion. He wasn't even saying he deserved to start over every quarterback in the league. He simply said truthfully that he believed he could start for some teams in the NFL. And guess what? He's not wrong. Go check the tape. Go watch the quarterback play across half the league this season. Mistakes, poor reads, no pocket awareness, inconsistency every Sunday. You're telling me Shedeur couldn't compete with that? That he couldn't outperform some of the bottom-tier starters we're seeing every week? Of course he could, and deep down, everyone knows it. But because he wasn't a first-rounder, because he didn't come in with the approved media story, he's expected to keep quiet, sit down, and never speak unless spoken to. Confidence is celebrated when it comes from the right name. For Shedeur, confidence is dangerous, and that's the impossible standard he's been held to since the moment he entered the league. He's expected to carry himself like a veteran QB, act like a team-first professional, shut down every distraction, and simultaneously apologize for believing in his own ability. It's like he's being forced to tiptoe through a career minefield, not because of anything he's done wrong, but because every little move is overanalyzed through the lens of his father's shadow. Other rookies get years to develop, freedom to make mistakes, and space to grow. Shedeur? He gets silence, benches, and critics waiting to pounce on anything that can be spun into drama. Here's the part that hurts the most. Shadur Sanders wasn't some last-minute consolation prize. Heading into the draft, teams wanted him. Real teams, playoff teams, smart organizations with real quarterback development infrastructure, teams that know what they're doing. One of them? The Baltimore Ravens. According to multiple reports, the Ravens had real interest leading up to the draft, and it wasn't some late-round flyer interest either. It was serious. They saw what most analysts saw Shedeur was polished, mature, and moldable. A high IQ player who studied defenses like a veteran, someone who could step in behind Lamar Jackson and hold his own when the moment came. And let's be honest with Lamar's injury history, a solid backup matters in Baltimore. If Sanders had landed there, there's a real chance he's already taken meaningful snaps. Maybe even started a game or two. But they passed. Not because of talent, but because of the unknowns. Then there were the Philadelphia Eagles, another contender who reportedly had eyes on Sanders. Not for a starting job, nobody's taking the reins from Jalen Hurts, but as a long-term development piece in a well-run organization. An organization that knows how to nurture quarterbacks, build systems, grow talent. That kind of environment? It could have turned Sanders into a future starter the right way. No panic, no politics, no forced silence. Instead, he landed with a franchise stuck in quarterback chaos, coaching paranoia, and organizational fear. And here's where it gets really interesting. There's been quiet buzz about another team unnamed, but firmly interested in making Sanders their quarterback of the future. They had him high on their board. Serious conversations were happening. Then, a pre-draft interview happened. We still don't know exactly what was said behind closed doors, but whatever was discussed, it spooked that team enough to scrap him from their board entirely. It wasn't a failed test. It wasn't a red flag in his background. It wasn't a scandal. Most likely, the questions turned toward Dion, and the answers weren't neutral enough. This team didn't want the headlines. They didn't want to deal with the Dion narrative. They were scared off by the potential noise, not the player. If your potential franchise quarterback gets blackballed because he's close to his dad, what does that say about the system? Here's what we do know. Since entering the league, Shadur Sanders has done everything right. Stayed professional. No locker room complaints. No social media drama. No public callouts. Just quiet work. Even that tweet, the one that started it all, wasn't aggressive or confrontational. It was calm, measured, peaceful. Way more mature than the situation deserved. So what happened in that interview? Most likely, nothing controversial at all. And that's what's so damning. Because if just being connected to someone as visible as Deion Sanders is enough to derail opportunity even when you've done nothing wrong, then it's no longer about football. It's about image control. And it's robbing the league of one of its most promising young quarterbacks. You could feel the shift the moment that tweet hit the timeline. It wasn't rage. It wasn't bitterness. It wasn't one of those vague, passive-aggressive, "we gon' see" subtweets players love to drop when they're fired up behind the scenes. No, this was something else. Trust in God. Let go of what I can't control. Short, simple, focused. On the surface, it read like surrender. But underneath, it was strategy. Shedur's not giving up. He's letting go, and those are not the same thing. Because sometimes, in a world built on politics, pride, and power plays, the most dangerous thing you can do is stop fighting behind the scenes and start laser focusing on your own purpose. And that's what he's doing now. He's done begging for fair chances. Done waiting for logic to win out. Done believing talent will automatically rise if you work hard enough. This tweet was closure to a battle behind curtains. A quiet way of saying, I see the game you're playing, and I choose not to play it. But that doesn't mean he's done competing. Not even close. If anything, this is the version of Shedeur that teams should be most afraid of. Because when a quarterback becomes mentally unshakable, when he refuses to be broken by decisions out of his control, that's when he becomes dangerous. No more internal desperation. No more frustration, clouding focus. Just pure work. Calm preparation, quiet dominance. And when that mindset clicks into place, opportunities stop being given. They start being earned in unforgettable moments that no front office spin can ignore. Because here's the beauty of the NFL: for all its politics, favoritism, and fear, it can't hide talent forever. Eventually, someone gets hurt. A backup gets benched. A practice injury forces a new rotation. And when it happens, even if it's for a single quarter, a single drive, the lights turn on. And when they do, all Shedeur has to do is be himself. If you've been paying attention to this story from the beginning, if you've watched the games, followed the silence, seen the patterns, one truth becomes crystal clear. Shadur Sanders didn't fail the NFL. The NFL failed him. And now, the Cleveland Browns are standing on the edge of a decision that could define their future, not just for this season, but for the next decade. They're sitting on a quarterback who can lead, who's built for pressure, who's done everything right, even while being ignored, blamed, and boxed out. They've already seen what Dillon Gabriel brings to the field. The rest of the league has too. So, with every game that Gabriel stumbles through, with every defensive bailout, with every wasted drive, the pressure clocks up. Because everybody knows what's really going on now. The truth has come out through the film, the numbers, the silence from the coaching staff, and now, through players speaking without speaking. And here's what's coming. Whether the Browns are ready or not, sooner or later, Shadur's going to get his shot. It may not be in Cleveland. It may not come neatly wrapped in a press conference and a clean depth chart shift. It might be a random injury, a mid-season trade, a desperate team in November with no answers left. But it will happen. And when it does, he's going to ball out. That confidence they feared, it's going to fuel him. That arm talent, it hasn't gone anywhere. That poise under pressure, it's been building silently every week he's been ignored. And when that moment hits, every team that passed on him, every media outlet that doubted him, every coaching staff that saw him as a liability is going to have to reckon with what they lost. Especially the Browns, because they could have been the storybook ending. They could have been the team that saw through the bias, that stood behind a young QB not because of narrative, but because of talent. They could have built something real, not with legacy or PR in mind, but with wins. Instead, they played scared. And now they're running out of reasons to keep pretending he doesn't exist. So here's the question Cleveland has to answer before it's too late. Will you be the team that developed Shadur Sanders? Or the one that made him a star somewhere else? Because here's the twist. Shedeur isn't the problem. He was never the problem. He's the solution. All they had to do was stop being afraid to use him.